We've talked about AI being used in productive ways for productive things, but what about something on the complete opposite end of the spectrum? What about something that is not only a bad project, but something that is utterly useless, that probably doesn't compile, and there is no reason for it existing? The kids talk about looksmaxxing, but have you ever codemaxxed? So, there is a project that some people are talking about right now with that name, codemaxxed. And if you understand the maxing vernacular, you might know exactly what we're getting into here. Now, before we get into the main repo, let's talk about the repo that powers it. To be codemaxxed, you must be codemaxxing. And this is beautiful. The world's first artisanally handcrafted enterprise-grade slop generation CLI tool for maximizing your GitHub contribution graph, because quantity is quality. Not being just your average slop generator, you can configure exactly the kind of slop that you want. So, of course, you have the level of sanity you want. So you might want to have code that it's nonsense. It's utter nonsense and nobody knows what it's doing, but it's corporate utter nonsense. Abstract singleton proxy factory bean manager implementation, which is gibberish, but wouldn't look out of place in a Java codebase. You can set it lower than that. You can have it be a little bit concerning, or just an Xbox Live handle if that's something you want. You can even have a turbo mode where it will maximize the number of commits. In this context, 24 commits per minute, just to make sure you have the maximal number of commits, because again, commits means work. If you're not committing code, if you don't have a higher number of commits, you're obviously working less. You can set it to enterprise mode, because when something is enterprise code, what that means is the code must be big. This will go and multiply the code by 10 times the lines, because that means enterprise scale, and of course, you can set the language, and when you do that, it will go and write code in that sort of corporate-y style for whatever language it might be. In Java, you get these ridiculously long names with getters, setters, and inner classes. In Python, you get meta classes, abstract bases, 15 parameter constructors, because as we know, the more parameters, the more power. JavaScript and TypeScript, callback hell, you'll see some of that. Promise chains to nowhere. Type wrappers wrapping wrappers. In Go, I'm not a Go developer. I don't really know what this stuff for Go, I'm not sure an interface in Go specifically is. If error does not equal nil, then return nil chains, Go routines sending to void, and for the generic code, which is going to be any of these languages, nested if and else 20 levels deep, because if you can read the code, it's not good code. Wrapper functions calling wrapper functions, and of course, the fake unit tests which just pass by the fact that they exist. When I say this is absolutely useless, I do mean absolutely useless. Whilst codemaxxing itself is going to work totally fine, the codemaxxed repo and the code that this thing generates, maybe it'll compile? Possibly, depending on specifically what part of the code you're trying to use. Because if there's import statements, good luck with that one. Nobody knows what's gonna happen then. Maybe you, approximate, you luckily land on something useful, but probably not. As you might expect, the creator of this has been talking about this over on Twitter, and it did start around April Fool's Day. There's a reason why we're talking about it now, though, even though it is an April Fool's joke. Built a tool to make sure you're perceived as the most productive engineer on your team, introducing codemaxxing. And sadly, that initial post didn't really get that much attention. Probably because, you know, there's so much slop out there and there's so many dumb April Fool's jokes that this one just kind of slipped under the radar. But it kept going. I will out-accelerate you all. My newest repo, codemaxxed, is already at 68 million lines of code and over 6,800 commits in just a day. Bring it on. Now, for context, the Linux kernel is around about 40 million lines of code. So this code base was already bigger than the kernel. And it didn't stop there. That was still very early on. It kept going. Codemaxxed is already up to 130 million lines of code, acceleration levels over 9,000. Good luck, GitHub. And that's gonna come back to bite him very, very strongly. We will certainly get to that. Don't you worry your little heart out. So, before we go any further, let's go and take a look at the codemaxxed repo, because it's a glorious mess. So this is configured with this line here, codemaxxing 1,000,000 lines in turbo mode, sanity level 30, and then it runs on a GitHub action every 30 minutes, generating more code and generating more commits. It generates 1,000,000 lines at once, and, well, some of them might compile. Maybe. Accidentally. One command, 1,000,000 lines, 0 value delivered. The sanity 30 means 70% of the code uses variable names like skibbity, ligma, and xx destroyer xx, while the remaining 30% maintains a veneer of corporate respectability. Let's see what some of it looks like, shall we? Being only 30% sane, if you look at the commit log, well, just pick anywhere in here, and it's gonna be gibberish. Added more lines because more is better. The worst part is, I have seen commits that are like this. Vibe coded this. The voices told me to commit. I am massive code. I am inevitable. Skibbity commit 42. No thought, head empty. To do. Understand what any of this does. Now this is something I've absolutely seen. Whilst the commit log is bad, arguably the code is worse. Now, I'm hoping it's gonna work. It loads eventually, sometimes. Oh, nope, not this time. Let's try to open it in a new tab, see if that works. Okay. It was working yesterday. You know what? That's even better. Okay, I tried it again. This time it worked. Now, it's only gonna show 1,000 files, but the reason why GitHub is breaking here, there's 244,000 files in this directory. GitHub does not know what to do with that. The fact that it doesn't crash more often with this repo, actually kind of impressive. The files that we do get to see, though, are an absolute mess. For example, we have, assuming it's gonna load, abstract adapter 1335. Perfect. This is just a giant wall of enums. What do? Nothing. Nothing at all. Each of them also have a comment next to them. Do not touch. Last person who modified this quit. Do not touch. This is load-bearing architecture. I will mass not be explaining this in the PR. To do. Refactor this in Q3, written in 2019. Skill issue if you can't read this. Who knows? Lorem ipsum. And it just keeps going and going and going. Now, I mentioned nested if statements, and, also, I love the else's they just passed. There's no reason for the else to be there. It literally serves zero function. It's not in a loop. It's actually just doing nothing. Beautiful code. This is some yandere dev level code. I didn't even know that code like this was possible to create. That's how bad it is. And of course, we have the tests which cannot fail. Assert true. Passing in. True. Assert greater. 2 and 1. Assert is none. None. And they're all like this. Assert 1 is in the list of 1, 2, and 3. Assert equal. A and A. Now, if this was JavaScript, maybe that would fail, but, you know, we're talking about somewhat of a real language here, and they are all like this. Every single test is exactly the same. It is testing nothing. It is doing nothing. It is just guaranteed to pass. Here we have spaghetti functions which do absolutely nothing. Firstly, we are setting context and godObject to none. They had not been defined before, so they are already set to none. Then we call LGTM internal. This calls LGTM internal implementation, which calls v2, which calls final, which calls final final, which calls final final for real, which calls final for real, and that returns nothing. So ultimately, we are setting a bunch of variables to nothing, and then at the end, returning nothing. Now, the Java code. The Java code is... whew! These import statements, man. Like, are these any different from just real Java imports? They're needlessly long. You don't know what they're pulling in. They're probably not pulling in anything. And then you have... You have this public class abstract adapter implementing a bunch of random interfaces, and then this is totally fine. This is actually kind of normal. This is just a normal setter. This is just normal. Like, yes, it's a weird name, but it's like just normal Java code. That's how cursed Java is. You just have normal Java code, and it fits right in. We have a bunch of functions which are just setting things to be null. All of these different functions, just null everything, don't touch, just null everything. This is your cleanup function. We need 30 different cleanup functions because reasons. Don't think about it. Just don't think about it. Now, when I planned this video, the goal was to show you, hey, look, some of the pages don't load when I got to this part. Now, the problem is we already ran into a situation where some of the pages don't load. Let's see if this one loads. This is the Java folder. I'm just going to open a bunch of them and see where we go. Java was fine. Okay. They are going to take like 30 seconds to load though. Okay, that worked. Oh, we got one of them crashing. That happens very frequently. That wasn't just like a one-off thing. Probably, I would say, depending on the time of day, 1 out of 4 openings of these folders just crashes the page. And it's not just this page that crashes. If we go to the insights, it's kind of just as bad. The summary here is probably not going to load. Yep. There were some other ones here. Code frequency. Yeah, code frequency. Too many commits to generate a graph. And various other things in here just don't work. GitHub is not really supposed to handle a repo with 350 million lines of code. I don't think anything's supposed to handle that much. It's gonna break pretty much everything. And I do not dare to try and download all of this code and see how much is actually here, like data-wise, because the answer is probably a little bit too much. Here's a bit of the JavaScript code. Here we just have a bunch of case statements that are doing console logs, because of course they are. Why would they be doing anything else? And then we have this. So this is just a chain of then statements. Need I say more? I don't even know how to explain how bad this code is. As such, GitHub has a little bit of an issue with this with this project existing. And well, there was another post made on Twitter with my codemaxxed project surpassing 353 million lines of code. Not a typo. I actually got a GitHub cease and desist. Hello there, I work on the support team at GitHub, and we have some concerns about your codemaxxed repository. We've noticed that the repository is growing fast while committing very frequently. This looks like some sort of automated activity that serves no purpose. And you'd be right. That is exactly what it is. Someone followed that up with the GitHub outage graph. Is this you? Probably not, but it is, it is a funny coincidence nonetheless. So if you notice the lack of commits in the past couple of days, that is why. That right there is exactly why. GitHub was like, hey, stop that. Bad. Don't do that anymore. We're gonna remove the repo in, about a week and a half or so. Fun while it lasted. When this happened, the dev tried to get a bit of attention over on Hacker News, and sadly, no one over there cared. But I care. And that's better than nothing. Not much better than nothing, but somewhat better than nothing. So, on that note, let me know your thoughts down below. If you've examined the repo and found something else fun that I just didn't come across, post in the comment section, show me what you found, because there is a lot of gold in this repo, which I did not cover. There's 350 million lines of code. I don't have time for that. There's 250,000 files in a single folder. But the repo is there, so go take a look. Anyway, if you liked the video, go like the video, go subscribe as well, and if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, subscribe, Pay linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and get your code on.